Welcome to the Evolved Caveman, where men learn to be successful and happy with your host, Dr. John Schinnerer, as he shares the most impactful ideas and practices for you to get the most from your relationships, your work, and from your life. Now here's Dr. John.
Hey everybody, this is Dr. John Schinnerer with the latest episode of the Evolved Caveman, and I am really excited today to have with me Craig Perra, and Craig deals with porn and sex addiction. So let me give you a few statistics just to start off quickly. So 54% of men regularly visit porn sites. 540% men are 540% more likely than women to view porn. 80% of men aged 18 to 30 view porn monthly. 50% of men aged 50 to 68 view porn monthly. 33% of men ages 18 to 30 think they're addicted to porn or are unsure. And all told, 18% of men worldwide think they're addicted or are unsure. So that means there's 21 million men out there that are addicted to porn. So let me introduce Craig, and then I'll bring him on. Craig Perra is world-renowned for transforming the lives of people who struggle with compulsive behavior, chronic self-deprecation, and sex and porn addiction. With success stories and clients in 20 countries, Craig has made his mark as the top coach for executives, musicians, professional athletes, and men in need of fast results and changes for the sake of their sexuality and relationships. Craig's been featured on a number of international media outlets, including The Katie Couric Show, The Steve Harvey Show, and Lifetime TV. Craig, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. How you doing?
I'm doing great, John. Thank you so much for having me. Those statistics are pretty ugly, aren't they?
Oh, they're brutal. You got plenty of work to do, my friend.
I'm a busy man. In fact, there's another statistic that I don't love, but I love that it illustrates the problem. This is one from the lawyers who handle divorces. The lawyers, no agenda. They're just filling out a survey with 300 other questions. They do it every 10 years. Their last one said that porn is a major contributing factor in over 50% of the divorces that are happening today. Think about the impact on the children. It's amazing. I never would have dreamed that this hobby of mine that started when I was a child, looking at Sears catalogs for bra pictures, finding a porn magazine in the garbage, and when that wasn't available, going to the National Geographics for the boobies and butts. I couldn't fathom that we'd be in this place where we are today with so many people, so jacked up from just losing control of this sacred, powerful, important part of themselves, their sexual selves.
Well, and so on that note, do me a favor and go a little bit into your origin story and how you came to be here.
Sure. So I was adopted at birth. My birth mother gave me away. And if any other adopted kids out there listening to this, you know you got issues. you got issues. The statistics are pretty clear on that. And so I was raised in a old school Catholic family. My grandfather, first generation from Italy. Essentially, the sexual training that we received was that sex is dirty and disgusting, and you save it for someone you love. So I had that veil of
message there.
Yeah, a little bit. There's that veil of shame, and sex was not something that was talked about. I had some challenges, with my parents, as so many people do. But there was an older neighborhood boy who helped me get away from some of those challenges. He was completely unsupervised. His parents were never around. He had his own private place, and he had pornography. And that was awesome. Unfortunately, what wasn't awesome was he used that pornography to exploit the power dynamic in our relationship. He was a few years older. I was, 8, 9 years old, and started touching me at a very young age. And so that what happens is that sexual part is no longer, had never integrated into me as a person. It didn't weave and flow with other parts of me. It's completely compartmentalized, and the power of those compartments grew over time. The behavior progressively got worse. Now contrast that with someone who's on track for significant success. I did very well in school, was class president, a star athlete, beautiful girlfriend. I married my college sweetheart, my beautiful wife, Michelle. We just celebrated 20 years together.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But it was not easy, and I put this woman through hell because that behavior continued to progress from, naked pictures to adult bookstores to hardcore graphic pornography to men, to women, to trans, to escorts, to streetwalkers, to the high-end escorts, to the most vulnerable of our population. That behavior consumed me, and it all ruptured about 9-10 years ago when I moved my family. I got fired from my assistant general counsel job back east, worked for a $3 billion a year property and casualty insurance company, lost that cushy job because I wasn't performing. And not because they caught me doing anything, but I'm the comeback kid. I get a better job, move my family cross country on a very lucrative relocation package. Things are great. And I hate the job. I'm not equipped for the job. And the behavior that I'd been able to suppress and stuff down just enough all came rupturing back. And I was knee deep in porn and prostitutes, watching porn at work. Anything I can do to numb, cope, and escape from the reality that I was so unhappy about. And of course, my relationship with my wife was a mess. You can't do this stuff as well as I was able to compartmentalize. The impact on the intimacy in my relationship was devastating. It all culminated.
Can I interrupt you there? Because in an earlier conversation, we had been talking about, you had mentioned something about projecting the negative energy of the relationship onto her. Yeah. All the negativity that was there got projected onto your wife. Can you go into that in a little bit of detail?
Sure. When you're acting out like I was, you need to justify it. Mm-hmm. I never saw myself as a predator, as someone who was exploiting the vulnerable women on the street. There's a number of ways to look at this behavior, but I was able to rationalize it because I was directing all of the negativity that I was experiencing, that I was creating, onto my wife. My wife was a bitch. She was a prude. She was acting like my mother. She was trying to control me. She was trying to tell me what to do. Just projecting all that negativity onto her. And that projection, one, made it incredibly difficult to connect on an intimate way with my wife. And it also justified the acting out behavior as well.
Yeah, thank you for covering that, because in dealing with anger, which I do, I see that dynamic all the time with men where we get angry about something, and in being angry, we just externalize blame. So nothing's their fault. Everything is someone else's fault. And it creates this vicious cycle, and that, then we use it to rationalize or give an excuse for the behavior that we're engaging in, whether it's sex or porn or drugs or alcohol or yelling or hitting or whatever it might be. So Thank you for covering that.
Yeah, it justifies it. And I think anger is a good analogy, John, because, I like to say, there's an expression I have: the bigger the anger, the smaller the inner child. And just like behind the mask of anger, in these root cause issues, the same is true for sex. When the addict, this big, bad, ugly part of you gets unmasked, and you start peeling, doing the work and peeling away the layers of the onion, you see insignificant, you see small, you see pathetic, you see not good enough. Those are the parts that...
Yeah, there's a couple things that I read on your blog about, lack of love for self, or going further, hatred of self.
Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned that seems to be at the root cause of a lot of these issues. Just such self-deprecation or such self-loathing.
The interesting thing is, and I've been working with guys now intensely for 7 years, and I have yet to work with a man whose primary problem had anything to do with sex. Mm-hmm. Now, there's always a sexual health swim lane. There's a work stream that we need to address, because make no mistake, that part is pretty banged up, right. But that's still not the driver. It is behind the mask of addict is insignificance, not good enough, low self-esteem, lack of love for self. That has been my universal truth time and time and time again. That's the root cause. Not high libido. That's relevant. It's not have different sexual interests than your partner. That's all relevant, but that doesn't explain the compartmentalizing and the lying and the complete lack of empathy and the narcissistic like behavior that surrounds all the acting out. You know what I mean?
Right. So, sorry, did you finish your origin story? I didn't know.
You know what? Let's see. So yeah, melted down, ended up in an inpatient facility in California. We call that a 5150. I volunteered. They didn't actually have the 5150. So if any of you know where the Van Halen's album title came from, now you know. It's that mandatory 3-day hold when you're banged up. And I got out, started getting therapy. I started talking to a guy. His name was George Collins. He was a guy who had been through it before. He was in Walnut Creek, California. He'd written a book. And, I'm looking for a job. I'm going to see him twice a day just to do everything I can to save my family because I was, at rock bottom. I realized that is what was important to me. I was important to me. My wife and kids were important to me. And about 3 months in, and he had seen me working with some other men. Because I was unemployed, I was helping him do some things around the office and helping him with his marketing. And he had me talk to guys who couldn't afford him. And he'd send me this one guy. The guy reported back that it was the best phone call he's ever had in his life. He was deeply moved. He ended up signing up to work with him. And he asked me, my therapist, my counselor, who, saw me at my lowest, had the ridiculous idea when he said, "Have you thought about doing this for a living?" And I said, "Your credibility is shot." I'm a lawyer. I'm an executive. That is the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. But then being out here in California, I went to one of these food truck places and I'm seeing all these people talk about their businesses, their entrepreneur efforts, angel investing and all this. I'm like, wait, those people look just like me. And I realized that this was my passion. This was my calling. There is nothing I'm better at than getting inside guys' heads and helping them move forward quickly. And here I am.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think one of the things that's powerful about your story is your vulnerability that you've apparently learned to adopt. I mean, that's a hard story to share, right? I mean, or
it
initially,
is.
I imagine.
It was initially. I've gotten much better at it, and I'm glad you just made that notation because this was heavy, man. I sunk so low. I wanted to try to kill myself. Like literally, it was a weak attempt. I want to acknowledge that. There are other ways to do it to make sure the job gets done. But that's how I felt at the time. And if I got lucky and happened to, win the suicide lottery, I was okay with that at that moment. Very, very low point. Deep trauma. I've experienced significant trauma throughout my life, and I've inflicted some of it myself, which I'm not proud of. But I love sharing, my failures and seeing other people be inspired to say to themselves, well, if he can do it, maybe I can too.
Well, and I think that's one of the big pieces, one of the big takeaways from what you just said is that purpose and meaning are huge. They're huge in overcoming depression. They're huge in leading a happy, fulfilling life. And it sounds to me like the work that you were doing as an attorney wasn't very purposeful or meaningful to you. And this work is incredibly meaningful. And so it gives your pain and suffering meaning and purpose, which helps you to deal with it, helps you to move forward.
Absolutely, John. And listen, in your work with men, how many guys are in jobs they hate, never would have imagined when you asked them as a child, guess what? You're going to work 10 hours a day, sit behind a desk and have more pressure and more stress than you possibly could imagine. And then you're going to go home and feel inadequate as a father and a husband. Congratulations.
Yeah.
You're a
you feel like you're shit on at work and feel like you're insignificant at home.
It's no secret why this behavior is so compelling to men. Mm-hmm. It provides that it's mindful, like an abuse of that word, but it is a very mindful activity. You want to disappear for a few hours. You want to get away. You want to escape. it does that to you.
Well, I mean, I get it. Like it brings you into the present moment. It gives you a positive emotional boost, and all your problems go away for that, however long it takes, 15 seconds, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is. Everything else fades into the background. So you're pain free for that period of time, which is really hard to do otherwise. I mean, it's the same, I think, with any addiction.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
The pain recedes into the background.
It's serving a purpose. It's doing something. It's numbing. It's coping. It's escaping. It's for my men who are cheating. They're getting their significance need met through that. Through the infidelity.
Mm-hmm.
That's my little expression. It's not the sex. It's the significance.
Mm-hmm.
It's that, and you guys know, right? I mean, everyone listening, the lady at Starbucks looks at you in the eye maybe a little bit longer, or that lady in the supermarket, did she look at me? And all of a sudden, look, I got my gut sucked in, my chest is out, I'm getting that lift, I'm feeling better about myself, and you can see where this goes.
Yeah. So turning to the topic of porn addiction specifically, so how does a listener know if they are addicted to porn?
I think that am I addicted, am I not addicted question, John, isn't serving people. And the reason why is because what I hope to my part of my value contribution is, brothers, we need to pay attention to our sexual health. So instead of taking these online quizzes, and listen, take them to see how banged up you really are, but ask yourself, is this part of me bringing me joy, pleasure, and connection? And
the other part of it is, how much is this adversely affecting my other relationships in my life?
That's the next part is what so when you is this part of me healthy? And if it's not healthy, how unhealthy is it? How is it impacting my relationship with my partner? How is it impacting me professionally? Because I got to tell you, synonymous with porn addiction is underachievement, mediocrity, malaise at best. There is nobody compulsively watching pornography and overachieving. I have not met that person yet.
Makes sense. They're mutually exclusive. If you're spending that much time watching porn or pursuing sex, you can't be putting that much time into achieving at a high level.
Absolutely not. Absolutely. They are inconsistent. So, am I addicted? Look at the impact. Look at the impact. Start with this question. Is this part of my life healthy? Is it bringing me joy? Is it bringing me pleasure? Is it bringing me connection? Or is it bringing me shame? Are you lying to your partner about your porn use? Like there are some relationships where this sounds crazy, where the partners don't lie about those things. They talk about those things. And for you guys, listen, wherever you are in your relationship, and I'm thinking of the guys early on who the secrets just started to build, get off that train as quickly as humanly possible and treat your sexual health like you do your mental health, like you do your physical health, like you do your spiritual health, because the data is clear that if you have a happy and healthy sex life, you are going to have a happy and healthy life, and that includes a relationship. So very, very important to start prioritizing this part of ourselves. And I think that's what's happening, John, the whole porn addiction and guys losing their minds and not being able to perform and get erections watching, with their partners because of porn. It's bringing a lot more attention and focus on sexual health, which I think needs to be a priority for men, particularly today.
Well, it's interesting to me because, I've done a lot of research on the man box culture and how we're socialized. And, we're brought up as kids and teens in this environment where either coaches or fathers or peers or even girls can say to you, if you show too much excitement or joy or romanticism, it's stop being so gay. And if you show too much sadness or fear or some sort of negative emotion, people will say, stop being such a pussy. And you learn really quickly to cut yourself off from 2/3 of the emotional spectrum. So the only thing really left for us are some degree of anger, lust, and stress. Those are the things that we can safely display as men without fear of being humiliated. And so the problem with this dynamic is it cuts us off from our emotions, emotional awareness. It cuts us off from learning how to communicate better in relationship, and it cuts us off from learning how to be better in relationship. So I see where this naturally would lead us into this porn dynamic and systematically kind of erode the quality of any relationship that we're in. I mean, it all seems to fit together to me.
It does. It's a perfect storm, and this is going to be studied. There's going to be, 20 years from now, the people, the experts and the PhDs I am highly confident that, the porn movement, which was initially supported by, most mainstream feminists back in the 70s, it was a free speech issue. It was a body autonomy issue. That pendulum is swinging full, swinging in this other direction where people are saying, wait a minute, this is not good for us. This part of us, this our sexual part as men, and I don't mean this from a religious perspective, although your audience is free to take it that way. This part of me, I'll talk about me, is sacred. Children who have this part of themselves, their sexual part corrupted, if they were touched, for example, at a younger age, they get a higher rate of suicide. Mm-hmm. They kill themselves at a higher rate. And what that tells me, that I need to pay attention and honor, respect this part of myself. And if it's broken, fix it, because it isn't, a lot of guys think, John, it's, oh, look, I got this little narrow issue. I'm only struggling with this. It's not just that. It will eventually start bleeding over into every area of your life and ultimately destroy your marriage and will certainly thwart significantly your professional goals, and it will stifle your life's purpose. And who wants to live like that?
Let's go a little bit different direction here. So one of the things that I've noticed that you've written about is the need, sort of those unmet needs that we have and the needs that we have as men for vulnerability and intimacy. So kind of with that lens, what does healthy sexuality look like to you? What are we shooting for?
Great question. The word that I like is authenticity. And I like that word because, one, when I first heard it, I said to myself, what the hell does that mean? I don't know.
To figure out.
I don't know what my authentic expression was. And I'll just, again, in the spirit of being vulnerable, I have a dominant sexual side. And that dominant sexual side, if you watch porn, is violent, is aggressive, is designed to hurt and inflict pain. And that's where I had let it go with pornography. And I had no idea. So as a result, I couldn't bring that into my loving, committed marriage relationship. I couldn't show up authentically. I didn't even know what authentic is. So sexual health is an authentic, honest, pleasurable sharing of that powerful part of who we are, where the net result is positive, is fun, connection, intimacy versus isolation, loneliness, and shame.
Yeah, and for example, if you want to get into dominance and submission in your primary relationship and you're both curious about it and you've got some safety and guidelines around it, a lot of couples benefit from that.
Of course. It's so, that's what I mean. It took rock bottom, really, for me to realize that this part of me, this and this is for our brothers out there who, whether they're dominant, whether they're submissive, whether they like this body part or that body part, that part of you so screwed up, and porn has played a role in screwing that part of you up. You got to figure out who you are and what you like and be honest and open. And that requires you creating that safety in the relationship where you can share those things, because it's so great. You like to be submissive. Be submissive in your relationship. Have that open, honest, direct conversation. But as you know, and I know, there's so much shame. There's no vocabulary. There's no role model. There's no mentor. There's no magazine article that is going to teach me how to communicate authentically. So it's absolutely a journey. But
I think you're absolutely right. That shame really shuts down a lot of conversations. It's a difficult conversation to say, hey, honey, how would you feel about being restrained.
Right.
I mean, or we don't have any practice in those questions. We don't have any skill in having those conversations. And it also takes, I would argue, a great deal of vulnerability, because there's a risk there. And the risk is your loved one says, the fuck? Like, you want to tie me up?
I like that.
What the hell's the matter with you?
Right.
I mean, that's the fear, right?
Right. And the thing is, it's so important to face that fear, because, and I know you see this, John, I see this all the time, where, just stripping the sex addiction and porn addiction aside, it's difficult to do, but just putting that aside for a second, you've got husband, wife, two very different people who are not at all connected sexually, different belief systems, different upbringing, different understanding, different. It's just different. And that's, you want to learn that early in the relationship, brothers. You don't want to wait till you got 2 kids and you just bought the house and you got the promotion, where you realize that, oh my God, we are so incompatible. Doesn't mean it's insurmountable, but it, I hope that this, porn addiction brings an attention to sexual health. So guys start reaching out early, not waiting it to get to a place. Because I see this debate, John, all the time. Am I addicted? Am I not addicted? And listen, I get that. But if this brings us closer to understanding how important it is for us as men to be sexually healthy, then I'm all for that. And that's.
And I think there's a deeper issue that you've touched on a couple times, and that's the issue of needs and unmet needs. And it for some reason, I keep going back to this man box culture and how we're socialized, because one of the big problems that I see with it is, to be a man, to be a stereotypical masculine male, means I'm supposed to be invulnerable. I'm supposed to be self-reliant, which means I don't have any fucking needs.
Right.
That's a huge problem.
Huge problem.
A, we don't know what our needs are, and B, we don't know how to ask for our needs. So then we get into a relationship. What do I need? I don't even know. And you've mentioned a couple times, like, or at least once, where, after you came out of this, or after people start to emerge from this addictive phase, they have to rediscover who they are and what they like, what they want, what they need. And for some reason, I see that in a lot of men in their 40s and 50s,
totally,
where they've been suppressing all sorts of shit for decades. And then we wake up for some traumatic reason, pills, alcohol, sex, porn, whatever it is, affair, divorce. And we're like, holy shit, who am I? What do I like? And I think that question in and of itself is incredibly powerful to sit and work on for a year or so, and just, what is it I do like to do? Who am I?
Yeah. And that needs part, John, is, and I want to throw this out there for everybody, because this question I find gets people thinking. If any of you out there are struggling with sexual secrets, shame, behavior that's fueling that shameful part of you, try this on for size. All of your negative, compulsive behavior is a function of your unmet needs. In other words, the behavior that you are engaging in is serving a purpose. Mm-hmm. Doing something for you. And it is so important to understand what that purpose is. Now, there's value there, absolutely, but there's another kind of, I call them swim lanes. There's another path that men have to, go down, and that's figuring out what in the hell do they need. Because men, guys come to me very low emotional IQ. They don't know why they do what they do. They don't know why they like what they like. They have when I say unmet needs, I get what are you talking about, Willis? That expression from that old 80s cartoon.
Different strokes?
Different strokes, right? Yeah, different strokes. Like what? I don't even know comprende. Like, I don't know what they're talking about. It's like a foreign language.
The other piece of that is, there are very few things in this life that I would say we are entitled to. And one of the few things I think we are entitled to is to be able to ask for what we need. Right. Now, your partner or anyone else can always say no to those needs. Like, you can say, I need touch. I need a hug. I'm hungry. I need food. I need you to back off. I need some time to myself. I need a blowjob. I need sex. Someone else, if they're involved in that, has the right to say no, but you are definitely entitled to ask for what you need.
I agree.
And it's a skill. It takes practice.
In the spirit of the 4th of July, we've been bestowed upon us certain inalienable rights, those being life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You cannot pursue liberty. You cannot pursue happiness until you know what those needs are, because you can't fulfill them. You may get lucky by chance that there may be some aspect of your life is filling that needs, but we as humans are needs seeking organisms, and we're going to get those needs met for whether you like it or not. The need for significance, the need to escape pain, it's going to happen. And I'd much rather be in control of getting those needs met than leaving it to my bad habits that accumulated since I was a child.
So let me ask you another question. So to what extent do you mentioned like a lack of social awareness, a lack of emotional awareness, low emotional IQ. To what extent do you see that playing in with, we men traditionally are lower on the EQ spectrum than women. To what extent do you see that playing into this dynamic with porn and sex addiction?
Oh, profound. Massive, like a major contributor to the dysfunction, and healing that aspect, owning that aspect of their lives is a critical path to success, John. It's dripping. It's everywhere. It's in every session that I have. One of the exercises that I love to have people do, around their unmet needs, I ask guys when they first jump into the program, I said, tell me all the good parts of your acting out behavior. They said, what do you mean good parts? I mean, come on, you do it every day. Tell me, what's it doing for you?
Yeah.
Doing for me, Craig. I'm in a hotel. My wife kicked me out, and I haven't seen the kids in 3 days. What do you mean good parts? And once they get over that initial resistance, they see the behavior is serving a purpose. It's doing something for them. And so you see the typical, relieve stress, get pleasure. Some men, it's a hobby, but at the end of that list, and I have guys blow this list out, and at the end, what I love it when I see it, there's something where the guys say, it's mine. It's mine. I've got a life. I live a life where I have no control. I have no control. My boss tells me when I got to get up, when I got to be at work, when I got to do this. And even if I own my own company, I'm still being controlled by clients and business partners and whatever it is. We feel like we have no agency and control. And then we come home, there's kids and there's pressure, there's stress, there's no agency and control. But there is this one holy, beautiful place where it is ours. It is ours. And that's what pornography has come to represent for so many men. It's theirs. And when you really look at it from that perspective, I think it's easier to see what needs this behavior is meeting in your life. And I predict that, your listeners, if they do the work, will find that those needs are quite profound and are critical to being successful as a human, and they've got to get met in another way.
It's funny, you're talking and I had this scene come to mind. I'm not really sure why, but do you remember the movie The Monsters Ball?
Yes.
Heath Ledger, Billy Bob Thornton?
Yes.
I remember there was a scene in that movie that just punched me in the face. It was Heath Ledger. He calls a prostitute to his place or a hotel, I forget. And he has sex with her, bends her over, fucks her from behind. And there is absolutely no emotion, no connection, no sensitivity whatsoever. I don't even know if there's any conversation. And I remember it just struck me as the saddest, most disconnected thing that I'd ever seen.
Yeah. I remember that scene. I remember very cold.
Wow. That's always stayed with me as just kind of the epitome of the disconnectedness of that type of sex.
Totally.
And so I think it feels good in the moment for whatever, again, how long it lasts, 15 seconds, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour. But afterwards, there's just nothing. And it's funny, I've talked to hundreds of men about their first time or how do you feel about one night stands? And I'm always shocked that the vast majority of men that I talk to are not fans of one night stands because they say, I need emotional connection.
I know. Isn't that crazy? Us guys needing emotional connection. Hey,
And there's actually some early research that shows that men feel things more deeply, more intensely than women.
Interesting.
We're socialized to mask it and hide it because we don't like being humiliated. We don't want our emotions to betray us.
That's right. Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. I think that it is, this part of us is precious. It needs to be honored. It needs to be respected. And here's, guys, don't get confused. When we say, you can have explosive sex and it still be intimate. It's for so long, John, those concepts where intimate meant harlequin, where I gently caress my wife's face as the dew rolls off the apple under the sycamore tree. And you're like, fuck that shit. Like that wishy-washy, mushy crap. And listen, that's nice too. I'm a gentle, kind, loving man, but I didn't realize that you can have great explosive sex, and that great explosive sex is better when it's intimate, when there's that connection and that exchange of control and power and vulnerability. That was a concept that was foreign to me. It was
I remember. So back in college, I had a college professor point this out to me, that there's sort of three forms or degrees of sex. There's making love, there's screwing, and there's fucking. So making love at one end is more gentle, tender. And I think there's times and moments where that's necessary and needed. Like if you're repairing after a fight, and perhaps, maybe that's one of your preferred styles, with the other end being fucking, where it's more aggressive, maybe a little bit angry, could be a little bit dominant. But I think it's important to realize that there's different gears that you can shift into sexually with your partner as well.
And all of them be intimate and connecting.
All of this requires conversation around it too, which, takes some practice as well.
Agreed. And all of it, the Harlequin style to the aggressive, it all can be connecting. Mm-hmm. And that's the part that escaped me for so long.
Wow. So where do we go from here? So you have your belief on porn addiction, which I respect. Is it the same idea for sex addiction?
It is. The sex addicted men who are, seeing prostitutes, strip clubs, the actual, doing something beyond looking at pixels on a screen. It's same root cause. Again, it's not the sex, it's the significance. In fact, when I was talking earlier about that, those were the guys that I was talking of. Okay. Still, none of those men, have primarily a sex problem, John. It's self-esteem, inadequate, not good enough. So very, very similar. There are slight differences, but overall, my treatment protocol, with few differences, is the same.
Okay, so we only got about 5 minutes. Can you, and I have to apologize to the listeners out there, I made a mistake and didn't hit the record button for the first 30 minutes of this interview. And so Craig kindly, we did it a second time. So it's a little bit shorter than I would like. And hopefully we can do a second one later, because this is fantastic material. I've really enjoyed this. But tell us briefly about the mindful habit system that you've developed.
Sure. So as I was, this is something I've been struggling with since I was a kid. And, I did what I was supposed to do. I went to meetings. I went to my therapist. I talk about my family of origin traumas over and over and over again, in some cases for years. But success eluded me. And when I hit rock bottom, I just knew I couldn't do what hadn't worked before, John. I couldn't, as valuable, incredibly valuable as the therapists in my life have been, I would not be here. I wouldn't have this knowledge base to share with other people without those experiences. I still wasn't helping me get control in a really practical way. And there was a number of things that happened to me at the same time. I heard this feed the right wolves Native American tale, two wolves inside us. Which one wins? The one you feed. Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit, came at me at the same time. To break a habit, you have to make a habit. And here I was obsessively for decades, obsessing on not doing the thing, not realizing that I was running afoul of Carl Jung's, tenet, that which you resist persist. I was, keeping that part of me alive. And I knew something was wrong. So I knew I had to do something different. So when I started working with men, I became obsessed with habits, and I became obsessed with the opposite, or in a way, mindfulness, not automatically and instantaneously responding and unmet needs. And so I started to work with guys, and slowly but surely over time, I built this system that helps men rapidly increase their self-control, dramatically elevate their emotional IQ, which is significant, since 75% of my clients come to me from long-term treatment programs, though unsuccessful. So self-control, emotional IQ, and healthy sexuality, that aspect of making this part of my life healthy wasn't present in any of my 12-step meetings that I went to around sex addiction and porn addiction. It wasn't present in any of the therapy that I was getting. So I knew that I had to build something. And that's another important tenet of the program, is helping men to show up as authentic sexual beings. And then the last piece that was missing for me was any element of sustainability. What happened with me time and time again is, oh, look, I'm in recovery, going to therapy for a few months, I feel better, and I stopped doing the things that make me successful. And I realized the deep, profound flaw in that approach, screwing up time and time again. So how to live a purpose-driven life, how to be, how do you respond to those triggers that you're going to get? It's inevitable. We're wired for variety, brothers. You are going to be triggered sexually. You are going to feel not good enough. You are going to experience fear. So I started taking a much more proactive approach in dealing with those risks. And that ultimately led to the birth of the mindful habit system that I now teach people all over the world.
Fantastic. Yeah. And again, the website is themindfulhabit.com for those of you that want to check it out. And Craig, thanks so much for your time today. I really enjoyed this. I would love to do a second one to make
Same here.
Same here. Because this was just a powerful conversation that I think a lot of men need to hear desperately.
Thank you, John. And I look forward to doing it again.
Awesome. So we will be in touch. And if anyone wants Craig's contact info, they will be in the show notes. Again, the site is themindfulhabit.com. Thanks so much. And that's it for today.
Thank you for listening to the Evolved Caveman podcast. If you like what you've heard, support us by subscribing, leaving reviews, and sharing the podcast with friends and colleagues. For the latest, most powerful tools to connect with like-minded men, join the Facebook group at The Evolved Caveman. Follow Dr. John on Instagram at The Evolved Caveman, all one word, or join the email list by visiting guidetoself.com.